just kidding. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing today? How's everyone doing?
How are you?
Good. Okay, this is just a basic press availability here. So I just want to cover a couple of topics on the front end. Today is the FEMA deadline. Of course, you all know that we put in a request to extend that by 30 days. We have not yet heard back by FEMA. There are, of course, exceptions for circumstances such as illness and other things, but we are begging you, if you haven't yet applied for FEMA assistance yet, please do. We did put a strong case in for an extension, but we have not heard back yet. The Water Assistance Program, the Water Division launched this Water Utility Assistance Program last week. It is currently accepting applications. Eligible residents can receive a one-time credit of up to $500 on a delinquent water bill. Go and apply online at stlwater.com, or if you'd like, you can fill out a paper application at the Water Division at 1640 South Kings Highway, their office there. We have more than 13,000 pass-through residential accounts, and we're hoping that we can get folks the assistance they need in the tornado zone in particular there. A few other things. We signed an executive order earlier this week. I signed an executive order that makes it easier to repair and rebuild, particularly in the tornado zone. We know that while all St. Louisans deserve faster turnaround in the building division, building those apparatuses out, we also know that folks in the tornado zone have an extra special need right now, and so our executive order does a few things. It gives the Cultural Resources Office, their staff, some flexibility on what with regards to local historic districts. That will be in place for 1 year. We extended the period of validity for conditional use permits. This is for businesses that would only have a year to reopen. This extends that to 3 years, and it also extends the time period to repair, replace a legal, non-conforming structure. This would be a building that is built in such a way that doesn't conform to current standards, but was badly damaged. Typically speaking, you would have 1 year to do that work. This extends that to 3 years to give some grace and flexibility for those in the tornado zone. We look forward to expanding and accelerating the work the building division can do in the long term, but in the meantime, this is a meaningful step to make sure that folks in the tornado zone have some exceptions in the building division office. Okay, with that, I'll take some questions.
Mayor, have you moved closer to Megan Green's position in kicking in an extra $100 million of that Rams settlement money into tornado relief?
Well, Elliot, I am supportive of some additional funds going into that effort, and as we build out what that looks like, we'll be making some announcements here in the coming weeks. But it's clear to me, especially as I mentioned, I feel like a broken record here. It was really important to us to make sure that we were really giving FEMA the first bite at the apple, particularly recognizing that FEMA wasn't going to come in and put forward any programs, anything that would duplicate anything that was already in place. So that coupled with what we're expecting from the state, which should be kicking in soon here, we are going to be looking to fill in gaps as we can with local funding sources.
Does $100 million sound like a good number to you?
We are looking at how we're going to be deploying those resources, Ellie, and I'll have some more information in the coming days, weeks ahead. Yeah, Mark.
Mayor, I have a two-parter on some of the FEMA relief. One, do you know what time exactly the deadline is? Is that 5 p.m., midnight tonight? And then also on the executive order, can you explain what the obstacle was that your executive order tries to overcome?
Yes, sure. On the FEMA, I do believe it's 5 p.m. We are hoping to hear from FEMA by 5 p.m. and I do believe that's when the offices would close for that. On the hurdles on the building division piece, on the executive order, Mark, it's a few things. As I mentioned, the non-conforming structures. So, for example, if you have a home that's built right up next to the sidewalk, okay, this is not something that is legally permitted right now. Typically, when something like when you have a structural issue, you're given 1 year to repair it before you would have to apply for you're non-conforming. It doesn't conform to current zoning laws. So you're kind of grandfathered in under the current law, but only given 1 year. So one thing we've done is extend that by 3 years and giving homeowners, property owners, an additional grace period there. We're also giving some additional jurisdiction to the Cultural Resources Office. So in local historic districts, you have, standards with regards to windows, particular roofs, and other things of that nature that are particular to the local historic district. This grants some additional authority to the Cultural Resources Office to give a little more grace in the tornado zone for those things. We're also, typically when you have a building permit, they have a 1 year lifespan. This is extending those so that recognizing that you can get a building permit, but you may not be able to complete that work in 1 year for a whole host of reasons. We're making those a 3-year permit cycle so that we're giving some more grace in that space. So there's a host of things there. We're also in the process that some things that do apply citywide. With that, we've expanded our hotspot hours where people can get over-the-counter approval for some residential projects. We've also expanded capacity within the building division to quickly process some permits. And we're in the process, this is a little bit longer on-ramp, but getting building permits online finally. That'll be a several month-long process here. But we're working to streamline the building division system as a whole. In the meantime, though, specific to tornado property owners, these adjustments, these extensions, if you will help alleviate some of the burden there.
The $100 million from the special session that was approved this summer in Jeff City, there was a plan to go to the Department of Public Safety. Have they received that, and what's the plan for that?
Yes, that $25 million you're talking about, the $100 million? Yes, the $100 million is something we are in continual regular communication with the governor's office on. We have been focused on the Army Corps of Engineers coming in and helping us conduct the debris removal and demolition required. This is an enormous lift, hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's something that we would really, really struggle internally to be able to manage. We feel confident that the Army Corps of Engineers would be the best suited party to do that work. There would be a local match. In that case, it would run through the state. So this is an area where we are prioritizing that matching capacity there and what that $100 million could look like. So as we are moving that project, that proposal forward and really leaning into our partners to hopefully get that through. In other words, having the Army Corps hold that and lead on that. We believe that a strong partnership with the state of Missouri helping us meet that. It would be well over $100 million in matching local funds to get that work done, given the price tag of that full body of work. So we're looking at that. We know we can't rebuild without removing the debris and demolishing the buildings that are beyond repair. This is a critical first step to doing a serious rebuild effort. And so we're leaning in on that as the first, as what those funds could really do for us.
Mayor, on the topic of the Cultural Resource Office, are you satisfied with the leadership of the Preservation Board and Richard Callow, and would you look to add to those 2 empty seats there?
Well, I think, we have been, we brought on Claire Sappa recently to head up our civic engagement and our boards and commissions. We are taking a look at leadership across boards and commissions throughout service capacities within the city. We have a lot of folks a lot of boards and commissions that are have folks on there that have been on there for decades. There's some need, I would say there's some need for some new blood across the board, and we're really looking at creating some passive engagement for a wide swath of new leaders. And so as we look at that, we're not moving in a lightning speed. We want to be very thoughtful in how we do this. But I think across the many boards and commissions and ways in which regular citizens can add leadership to the city, we are looking to engage on that.
The HUD's committee this afternoon advanced a slimmed down version of the Millennium Hotel redevelopment project. It took out the incentives and just advanced the blight study and eminent domain. Do you feel like the incentive that was offered was too rich for the city's blood? What do you think is the sweet spot for what the city should offer them?
You know, that's a great question. We're leaning in on what the incentive package will look like. And I think taking that out of this particular board bill gives us a longer on-ramp to figure out what that looks like. The demolition, the process of moving this project forward is going to be many, many, many months, I believe over a year, to really get moving on it. And so therefore we've got some time to really think through what that looks like and evaluate the best path forward for it. And so really I think just taking that incentive package out, that prescribed package out gives us a more thoughtful approach to how we handle it.
Mayor, the SEIU wants the city to demand labor peace in that agreement. What do you think?
I haven't talked to the SAIU about it. I know they've reached out. I wasn't sure what the issue was. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm ready to dig in on that, but I don't have an answer today on that. But I think labor issues are important ones.
You've sat on the police board for a while now.
Say that again?
You've sat on the police board of commissioners for a little bit now.
All of 2 meetings, yes.
Well, sure.
Yes.
But you've been in contact with the other board members. What's your sense of the room? How does the board get along with and like the chief?
That's a tough question. I don't want to speak for the other board members. And like I said, we've just had 2 board meetings as of this time, both of which were public. And that, there's been a little bit of there's obviously been some communication outside of that, but to be frank, not a ton. I think, what's really happening here is there's an on-ramp. We're all learning, not just the board members, the state and the city is really learning what state control, what form it will take. The bylaws were just adopted last week. I am really pushing for a civilian oversight review component that looks like a real citizen-led effort to have a real say in the policies and procedures of our police department. I think it's important in building trust. And so we are working through the issues. What I would say about the board as a whole is that we each have we are all figuring this out. It is a long process. There's a lot to be figured out just mechanically, like I was mentioning the oversight board and what role they would have, whether the board itself would serve as that body. It is my hope that that is not the case, that we have real citizens there. But I do think that the board interacts positively with the chief. I think there's a positive relationship there. But again, I wouldn't want to speak for any of the other board members or even guess what is in their minds. There's certainly, the chief has been very responsive when the board asks questions and been very engaged in that process as so far as the chief can be while still running a police department.
There have been some city projects that intersect streets on Gravois, even though it's a MoDOT corridor. How can the city continue to strengthen that infrastructure?
That's a great question. There's a lot of interest, rightfully so, on Gravois, particularly because it's such a long road, it's such a dangerous road, it's such a wide road, and because of that complication that it is a state road. It's also extremely unusual in its orientation, being diagonal through our city, so the intersections are not only far more numerous because of that orientation, they're far more dangerous. They're very, very unusual orientation. There's been a big push, particularly by citizens, to reconsider Gravois, to create a road diet and to really think through how we can make it a safer corridor. I'm absolutely in favor of that for lots of different reasons. You look at the fatalities that have occurred there, the pedestrian fatalities, and it's heartbreaking. So how can we work better with MoDOT? I think we are exploring what a more constructive relationship with MoDOT looks like. From broadly speaking, I'd like to see our Department of Transportation spend more of its tax dollars, its gas tax in particular. In the city of St. Louis, we generate a larger percentage of gas tax dollars than we receive from MoDOT in infrastructure, and that's something I hope will change. I think we've got to have a collaborative relationship with with the Missouri Department of Transportation for Gravway, for the roads that they maintain within city limits, but for the highways. I'd like to see better mowing along 55 and Highway 70 and better cleanup along those corridors as well. We've got a lot of work to build those relationships at the state, but I am hopeful on that front. I've had great conversations at East-West Gateway. We'll have another one this week with the director of MoDOT, and the governor's constructive involvement in the tornado leads me to believe that we're going to have a better working relationship with that department moving forward.
Mayor Spencer,
Yeah.
what is the status of the jail oversight board at this time?
That's a great question. We still have standing members of the Jail Oversight Board. We just appointed Nate Hayward as our new commissioner. He will start at the jail next month as he retires out of St. Louis County. We've also brought in a deputy to serve in a meaningful capacity there as well. The board of the oversight board remains as it has, but we are going to be looking for some additional leadership on that front as well. I think it's really important as we bring in that new leadership, we kind of do those things in an orderly fashion. But I will also mention that we have now taken 2 tours of the jail itself. Myself, staff, and members of the oversight board. The last one that we conducted was unannounced, and the staff there was extremely accommodating of us popping in and checking out the facility. I think those are meaningful engagements, and I'm grateful that the board members are making time for that and are engaging in a constructive manner, one that's thoughtful. Because as you know, with the recent fatalities there, we have a lot of work to do there, and we are going to remain engaged and constructive on that front.
Implementing some type of testing or some type of qualification for them to go through like the previous administration did?
You know, we're going to lean into legal on that. That's a question that remains, but it's my perspective that we need thoughtful leadership there. That's the most important component. Whether there's tests associated with it or not, I'm not ready to speak on that, but I do think that having a thoughtful oversight is really, really critical to making the changes that we need to make there.
And one last question. Are you in favor of having family and friends go to visit the people that are held there?
I don't want to speak necessarily about that, but I mean, I think in general, anytime you have an incarcerated individual, having family and friends be able to interact with folks while they're incarcerated, held in custody, is important to continuing family relationships, a whole host of mental wellness and other things, not just for those incarcerated, but family, friends, the community as a whole. So I think that the more we can do to facilitate that, the better we all are. It's one of the issues we've been thinking through with regards to federal prisoners. A lot of the folks that are held on charges, on federal charges, because there's no space here, are held out of state. It's extremely difficult for those incarcerated and their family members to go visit. Traveling is often prohibitive. It's also extremely difficult for their defense attorneys and other folks in the justice system. So we're looking at that, and we're looking at ways that we can better facilitate folks being closer to their family units. It's important.
Mayor, what kind of help is there for people who were not heads of households, but people who are living in those homes, could be relatives or whatever? Are they just now homeless?
On FEMA?
Are they getting any kind of help at all?
Yes, FEMA is actually able to help folks that are not homeowners, and they have been able to relocate many folks. I think we are looking at about 7,000 households that have been already accepted into FEMA assistance, and that looks like down payment assistance, it looks like rental assistance for many times over a year, and stipends to get some of the basics situated. So you don't have to be a homeowner at all. In fact, the majority of those folks are not homeowners, but are other folks within the zone. You do have to have a residency. You do have to prove that you lived there. I think there are some hurdles there for some folks that may not have had proof But we are confident that you don't have to be a homeowner to get FEMA assistance.
On the FEMA deadline, and I apologize if there was a mix-up here, a spokesman with FEMA just reached out and said the deadline to apply is actually midnight tonight, not.
It is midnight. Thank you, Mark.
So
I
for,
appreciate that.
I didn't mean to confuse the issue, but for any holdouts who might be watching the local news
Yes.
tonight, how would you persuade them to get their application in today?
Get your application in today, please. If you feel like you don't have all the information, that is okay. The deadline is just to get the application in. You will still have time to amend that and supplement it with the necessary information that you would need to get accepted. The key here is really just to get the application in. As I've mentioned, we have had over 7,000 families already assisted by FEMA. Over $30 million has gone out the door already to folks. And so these are real dollars. It's not going to make everyone whole, but it is going to help. And so we are fully encouraging everyone. We've had great responses from folks that have engaged, that feel like the FEMA folks on the ground have been enormously helpful. The reviews have been tremendously positive. If you're fearful, please just get the application in. If you do nothing else, then just supply your name and the basic information. The FEMA support system, which despite the deadline, will continue to be on the ground, can help you get the supplemental information you need to get approved.
Two more
Mayor,
questions.
sorry.
Mayor, is there a chance that there could be a lapse or a gap in FEMA where if by midnight tonight the city doesn't find out one way or another and they turn around Friday and say, yes, we'll give you another extension?
We've learned not to predict FEMA, so I am not going to try to do that here today. But what I can say very confidently is that the folks who are on the ground here, who are working for FEMA, will continue to do their best to assist our residents. We've had a true partnership with the folks that have been deployed here over the long span of many months that we've been working with them, who've been phenomenal.
What is the latest on Darlene
Okay.
Green
I'll take you both.
and the mistaken checks?
I don't actually know the answer to that, Elliot, but that's a good question, and one I don't have the answer to, but maybe feel like I should. I know the Civil Service Commission was digging into it. I should have an answer to you shortly, Elliot. I don't know. And I'll just take one more since that was a quick one.
You've mentioned your concern about FEMA money coming through. We know the city had to make changes or decided to make changes on the minority contracting goals because of the federal administration's stances on DEI. Are you getting a sense from the governor at all that he's being, for lack of a better term, kind of held up against a wall as far as decisions he needs to make about whether redistricting or anything that might have an impact on FEMA or other aid to the city?
I would never, ever try to speak for the governor, but I can only imagine what folks across the board are feeling. I know, the FEMA folks that were on the ground, as I've mentioned, their hearts were here with us in St. Louis, and they were getting all different kinds of orders changing underneath them. A lot of things are out of their control. A lot of things are out of all of our control right now. So I wouldn't want to speak to that, but I will make one correction. We've paused contracts as we are looking at how to move forward. Our consultants are on the ground right now, Griffin and Strong. We met with them this morning. We are very confident about the path forward and how we're going to work with them, a national leader in not only disparity studies. They've helped and produced a disparity study here for the city of St. Louis. They recently did one for St. Louis County, really outlining the clear disparities in contracting in St. Louis, but making sure that we have a path that looks as protective as possible, not just for the FEMA funding that we need, but for the massive amount of federal investment that's going into our airport and a host of other things, that we're being as protective as possible while also moving the needle, the much needed movement that we need to see in contracting. We need to see our disparities in wealth in our community go down. And that's why our city has commissioned these disparity studies. They're very clear. We have a lot of work to do on that, and we're ready to do that work. So while balancing all the other pieces here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.